There are lots of easy and really fun things you can do to add life and energy to your architectural sketches, to really make them pop. In this lesson, I'll share some of my favorite sketching tips and tricks, including composition tips to incorporate as you set up your view, mark-making tips like the upside-down L for windows, and how to use color and line to add a sense of life to your sketch. When I think about starting a sketch, I'm thinking ahead to how I'm going to paint it. One composition trick I love to use is to alternate lights and darks to create a strong sense of flow through the space and to draw the viewer's eye into the image. So this sketch is from Italy, and I was sitting in this deep shade as I was waiting at the bus stop for the bus. And it was a great composition because I loved to use this L shape, the dark L shape in the foreground, and then use that to help frame the view in the back. So essentially I'm going from dark to light, and then I have some dark again at the back. And what that does is it really pulls your eye into the space of the sketch. And I think about it as a sort of zigzagging into the sketch. So we start here, then we go here, then we go here. And what that looks like in a diagram is this. So I have this dark edge, dark shadow, that really frames the view in kind of an L shape. Then my focal point is actually right here, the church. And then I pop it out with a little more dark at the back. And then it's also really fun to sort of add a canopy that's dark as well. So as I set up my sketch, I'm actually thinking about how I'm going to put these elements in so that I have an alternating dark, light to dark. Now let's talk about another aspect of composing your sketch on the page. And it has to do with that corner, that first corner that you put in, and how it sets up the entire composition of your sketch. So this sketch, we're back at Wat Arun in Bangkok, and you'll notice that this corner is off-center. And it's important to have put it off-center because if I locate it right in the middle of my sketch, it basically divides my sketch in two and forces the viewer's eye out of the drawing. So I've done two things here to make this work. One is I've set this corner away from the center. The other thing is to make sure that this angle and this angle are not the same. Otherwise it really flattens out your view. Let me show you in a diagram. So when I start my sketch, I make sure not to locate that corner right in the middle, because let me show you what happens. If that's right in the middle here, and then I have the perspective going back this way, in this way, it's really divided that page in half. And it forces the viewer's eye out this way and out this way. So instead, I really recommend that you locate it off center. It could shift to the left, it could shift to the right. I tend to like to shift things to the left. So then we're getting this, which is more dynamic, it's asymmetrical, and so it creates more of a space here, and the eye is sort of drawn into this part of the sketch. So let's take a look at what happens also in an interior corner. So that was an outside corner. Let's look at an inside corner. Same thing happens. I see a lot of sketchers do interiors and they're sitting and looking straight into the corner of the room. But who wants to sit in the corner of a room? So this is what I would not recommend. It really, again, divides your picture in half and forces the viewer eye out of the image. Instead, pop it over to one side, left or right, and vary these angles a little bit more, so that this angle is not the same as this angle. One's sharper, one's a little flatter. It makes for a much more dynamic sketch because we've got all this space over here to go into. And the viewer's eye heads right into there. So those are a few composition tips. Another tool that I like to use when sketching is what I affectionately call the upside down L. Let's take a look at this photo from Manchester, England. So as I look down this street, take a look at this white building on the left. The face of it is in the sun, but I get a little bit of a shadow inside those windows, and it really helps the windows feel like they're receding from the face of the building. So this is the shape that I'm talking about. I call it an upside down L. And I put it into sketches when I'm looking kind of at a sharp angle. Instead, it doesn't really work if you look straight on at the window, but if you're catching just the side view of it, it works really, really well. So I do this, and then I do like a little diagonal for the shadow. And then sometimes I even add the little shadow underneath the base of the window. So let's take a look at that, how that looks in a sketch. So I have my light guidelines. Going to my vanishing point, I can draw the little rectangle in for my windows. And then the fun part, I add the upside down L. I get so excited about this. And I make them really dark. And here's the next one, a little narrower. Next one. And they can just keep going on down the street. And then I can add a little bit of a shadow underneath as well. And it looks great. It really makes those windows pop in perspective. Let's take a look at it in a sketch. This is a really quick sketch I did in the blazing heat of Orvieto, Italy. And this is the cathedral in the town, and we're looking straight at the entry door. But I want to draw your attention over here to the left. These are my upside down L's, and you can see even when they're painted in the shade and they're pretty dark, that shape still really makes those windows pop. This is one of my favorite tricks, the upside down L. One thing I love about this sketch is how it's really fun to use dark colors or dark tones behind a building or behind an edge to really pop the building forward in space. So here I've used a dark sort of bluish purple to really pop this edge of the building forward in space, pop it out. Same thing for the backside here, only it's less of a contrast, so it's not quite as noticeable, but it could be trees, or like in this sketch, I use a dark sky to really pop the buildings forward. So it's talking about space, the dark behind to pop the light forward. Let me show you in a quick sketch. So if that's our building, I will often even make up trees. Don't tell anyone, but I will make up or use forms, dark edges behind to really pop this edge forward in space. Or like in this other sketch, I have a dark sky. And the greater the contrast at that edge, the more pop you get into your sketch. But it works really well for creating a dynamic sense of tone and color in your sketch. Creating a sense of energy and activity in your sketches brings them to life. Let's look at some ways to do this. These tips are quick, but they add so much. They're often added at the very end of a sketch, when you're frantic because your friends are getting ready to leave the spot. It's also really fun to add these things. One of my favorite things to do, shown here back at King Street Station, is to add reflections. I keep a little bit of white, and then I draw or paint in reflections going straight down. It's sort of that rainy street look that adds a lot of sparkle and a lot of life to a sketch. And it's really easy to do. And a lot of sketchers put that in, even if there really aren't any reflections. It just adds so much to the sketch. And it's fun also when you're painting, you can drop some different colors in it and then watch them mingle so that it feels really wet. So reflections going straight down are a great thing to add. And let's look at another image of King Street Station. Again, reflections in the floor. So the white reflects white, the dark reflects dark, and then I add little spots of color. And this brings up one of my favorite things to do. It's literally the last thing I do to every sketch. I add 3 spots of orange. I usually use pyrrole orange. And here you can see 1, 2, 3. And for some reason, Adding those 3 spots of orange just makes all the difference. Sometimes I'll add a little yellow too, like here you can see it transitioning from yellow to orange, and a little bit of yellow here. I generally put them right around the eye level line, and for some reason that little spot of orange just really brings a sense of activity to the sketch, and it draws the eye into the center again and all that activity that's happening along the eye level line. So reflections, 3 spots of orange are 2 of my favorite things to do. So here's a sketch of a busy Seattle street. This was done as a demo with Urbansketchers workshop. And it was really, really fast, but it shows a lot of the different things that I like to do to add activity and energy to the sketch. For one, the quality of your line really adds a lot to the sketch. If you draw quickly and make your marks quickly, somehow the energy from that motion is conveyed in the line in your sketch. So make quick lines. Slow lines tend to be kind of a little bit lifeless. So if you draw quickly, it really helps. Another thing to do is to add wiggle to your line. So I did that here, showing these power lines going back and forth. I just literally wiggled as I was drawing. Another thing is to build up some of the color and line work at the back of the image to really pull that viewer's eye all the way through the perspective and the space. So I will even just make kind of random marks. It doesn't matter if you're really drawing exactly what you see, just some dark, some light, and then I throw in a few spots of color, and of course my 3 spots of orange, and a little bit of yellow, throw some reflections into the street, and suddenly a sketch that's pretty plain suddenly looks very active. So let me show you how I do that. Here's a sketch that I already started. So let me show you how the lines that I make can really add some energy. And that's part of why I use this triangle when I sketch, because it really allows me to speed up. So I can add more back here. And again, quick really seems to have a lot more life to it. I'm kind of just making up some buildings here. It can be freehand as well. Quick is good. Now let's add some squiggly lines for these power lines. So a lot of architects literally introduce a squiggly line. Squiggly is not the greatest term for it, but a wiggly line into their sketches is a way to add energy. And then next, I'm going to just add some darks to the back. And they're just kind of random. But you can see how it starts to draw your eye back. I'm using the vanishing point, creating a little bit of perspective. Another thing to do is to quickly add some people. And it doesn't matter if they're perfect. You can literally just do what I learned in school to call bubble people. But adding people in your sketch adds a lot. Okay, let's add a little color to this. All right, let's start adding color by putting a little bit of yellow back at the horizon. And I'm going to go ahead and paint some sky in. And you'll notice I pick up my brush a lot when I paint to leave some little white spots. I'm going to pick up some manganese blue as I bring it down. And let it blend a little bit with that yellow. Okay, let's add a little bit of color to the faces of the buildings. I'm going to assume the sun's coming from my favorite side, the upper left. I'm going to add a little bit of shadow, shade and shadow on this side right here. And I'm working carefully so that ideally these don't bleed into each other too much. And I'll put a little bit of a frame in here, an L shape. Okay, and you notice the way I make marks also helps add a sense of energy. Let's add a little bit more to the buildings. Again, this is super fast. All right, let's add a little bit of reflection to that street. I'm going to mix a gray, kind of a bluish gray, and let's just pull it down. And I think I'm going to now go and add a little bit of dark to the back. So I'm going to mix a gray quickly with ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna and a spot of permanent alizarin crimson. I'm going to darken up that pencil. And the people. Now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and orange along the eye level line. So let's start with a little bit of yellow. Especially where it's wet, I can just drop it in. And orange, my pyrrole orange. 1, 2, 3, at least 3 spots. And just that little bit of color adds a lot. Yeah, I think I'll add a little bit of green to the back. Pretend there's a tree back there. And it needs a little warmth. Let's add a little burnt sienna. Let's say there's a brick building in there somewhere. Then some people like to add splatters to their sketches. We can try it, but I don't usually do that. But basically you load up a brush and you do this, and you can add splatters. That's a great way for adding energy to your sketch too. When all else fails, you can splatter. Anyway, so this is super quick, but it shows some of the things that I like to do to add energy and life to a sketch. If you want to learn more about adding energy to your sketches, I highly recommend James Richards' class, Sketching the Energy of Places. In the next lesson, we'll take what we've learned and apply it to sketching on location.